Hello people, it's myself Jonathan, also known as the PC Genie. Today I'm going to be reviewing this, which is a Blackfencer Federschwert. I'll give you a little close-up. This is the design, so it's got a steel pommel, it's got this sort of quite coarse grip with a sort of rectangular but rounded edge cross-section, which is good for edge alignment as opposed to rounded grips. It's got these steel quillons, and optionally you can buy these, which obviously soften a blow if you're going to do anything with the quillons, like murder strokes, hooks and things like that. Got this type of section. This is part of the general design you see on anything that's a Federschwert, a historical training sword. You'd normally see it in steel versions. It's got fillering, always a positive for me, but that's personal preference. Fillering's always good for cutters, lightens and stiffens the blade. But yes, in terms of its general sort of feel and how it works, it does actually have quite a bit of weight to it. So I already did a review on the Rawlings line of swords, and they're a bit sort of lightweight, and it doesn't quite represent a steel sword, you know, a real sword as realistically. Whereas in this case, the weight and the heft in terms of the balance, its general weight, and just the way it acts and performs of its flex and whatnot, it very much is reminiscent of a steel sword, even though obviously it's not going to be as hard hitting or as dangerous as sparring with actual steel. So that's one of the useful things. It's that compromise again, just like the Rawlings line, where you've got something that's obviously plastic and not as hard hitting if you don't want to, you know, gear in extremely heavy padding and go full pelt. Something like this is, I'd say, pretty ideal. And admittedly I was a bit sceptical at first, but now I've actually got one and I've had more chance to experiment. I do agree with some of the other people I've met in HEMA that this, I'd say, possibly is better than the Rawlings line. Again, the flex is more realistic. The Rawlings ones I had, they're pretty good, but they have a tendency to do a bit of whipping around, whereas these, they've still got that kind of flex in them and do whip a bit, but it's not nearly as significant. Another useful thing is, you might see there's this weird sort of line. You've got the outside of the edge sort of looks a bit brighter, and then in the middle it looks almost dirty. That is actually a deliberate roughening of the blade, because one of the things that steel and, well, sharp blades do is when edge contacts with an edge, it actually sort of bites in and it binds. So rather than all this slipping about everywhere like a flat on flat would do, that type of bind can be more realistically simulated with this. And so again, with that rough edge, as opposed to some people who might put hockey tape and other things to deliberately roughen other training swords, even maybe sort of smooth steel, this can, in its inherent design without modification, have the extra bit of bind. So again, if you're wanting to practice those types of things, close play especially, it helps with that. And then of course you can feel the difference more between parrying on the flat, where it's going to slip away, and parrying on the edge, where it's going to stick and bite in. So that's one of the good things. Like I say, I mean, in terms of its balance, let's have a check. It is, I see that, well, it's a little bit back-weighted for my opinion. That might be how Federschwerts go in general. I'll admit I don't have a steel one of that type. I have a steel long sword of a more realistic, you know, as in more battle design, so to speak, as opposed to Federschwerts, which, to those of you who don't know, were used historically as training weapons and were in this sort of shape and size, but obviously made of steel. So it's an interesting difference, but again, I mean, it doesn't seem to be too bad. There's certainly, with the weight in general, there's enough heft in a cut, and you do need to make sure you've got adequate padding so you're not going to cause injuries, because they're even more likely to cause injuries than something like, again, the Rawlings. Beyond that, admittedly, sorry, I'm going to keep comparing to the Rawlings, but these come in set designs. So on the other Rawlings line, you can have the pommels changed, you can do things with the quillons, especially when you've got the single hand versions and things like that, whereas these are always a set design. The only difference the only sort of customizable part is that these rubber stoppers for safety can be removed and put back on. So yeah, in general, I really do like this design. It's, to be honest, it's pretty much as good as you can get with, you know, the sort of plastic and lighter end types of training weapons without having to go into heavy steels. Well, not heavy, going into hard steels. So again, it's a nice compromise because it's certainly got a realistic performance, but at least you don't have to go with extreme padding to ensure you don't end up in the hospital. These, in terms of price, I think, yeah, they're about £70. This is the, I think it's version 4 or something like that. There are a few other versions. Blackfencer do other things like sabres, single-handed swords, and even things like montantes, which are giant swords as big as a man. So they're quite useful as well, and I've seen them in action in my club, and they are fairly similar to this in what I've mentioned in a realistic performance, edge binding, and other characteristics. So all in all, I'd say especially with grips like this that help with edge alignment, even with your eyes closed, you can feel it more. I'd say it's really good. I'm quite surprised actually. As I say, I was sceptical at first. I thought, oh yeah, Rawlings are perfectly fine, but then when I got a proper experience with these, I realised just how good they are. So yeah, I would definitely recommend them to people. And have a good day, guys. See you later.